thank God for each and every one of you who have joined us here in person at our district association meeting. We also thank God for each and every one of you who are joining us virtually via Facebook and via YouTube. The name of this class is Using Technology to Enhance Ministry and Missions. Using technology to enhance ministry and mission. This is the Stone River District Association Congress of Christian Education that will convene today, Wednesday, May 11th, through Friday, May the 13th. I am your facilitator, and I'm glad to be here on today. And we thank God for Pastor William Harris and the Galilee Baptist Church for being our host church on today. Look, we're going to open up with a word of prayer, and then we're going to jump into this outline and into this conversation. For those of you who are joining us via social media, please, ma'am, please, sirs, put your questions in the comments, and we will engage you at the most opportune time. For those of you in class, feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask your questions as we dive into this outline. Let us go to God in prayer. To the all-wise and knowing God, who is the creator and sustainer of life, here we are once more and again, thanking you for this day. We thank you, God, for this opportunity just to come together and grow and learn from you, even through this technology that you have given us. We come praying now, God, that you touch our minds, that you touch our bodies, that you touch our spirits. We ask, God, that you increase, that you allow us to decrease. Allow something to be said or done to encourage us to run on a little while longer. We come praying, God, that anything we feel in asking, that you don't fail in granting. It's in Jesus, who is the Christ's name, that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Once again, the name of this class is Using Technology to Enhance Ministry and Mission. And our outline says simply, this is the things we're going to be discussing over the next 3 days, prayerfully, that we gain from. We're going to be talking about the case for technology. We're going to be talking about technology for image and influence, technology for creating community, technology for worship and teaching, technology for evangelism and stewardship, technology for staff effectiveness. We're going to talk about field-tested technology, and we're going to talk about church tech now and future equals relationships. That's what we're going to be talking about on this week. And if there's anything that you want covered that's not covered, or anything that you need covered, please, ma'am, please, sirs, let us know so we can begin to talk about it. So let me ask this question. How many of us in class have ever used technology? How many of us have ever used technology? The reason why I wanted to start with this question, the reason why I wanted to ask that simple question is because the truth of the matter is I gave 3 quick stats in our outlines. Number one, 77.4% of people in the United States use the internet. 77.4% of the people in the United States uses the internet, which means that there are more people alive that use the internet than people who don't use the internet. 77.4% of people use the internet. So literally, that is almost 80% of the America's population uses the internet. So when you think about a pool that you want to dive into, especially when it comes to saving souls, especially when it comes to changing lives, you must look at the internet, because 77.4% of the people uses the internet. The second stat I want us to see, which was a significant stat, is this. Over the last 20 years, so since 2002, mobile phone subscriptions grew from 12.4 million to 4.6 billion. Don't miss that. Cell phone subscriptions. People who use cell phones have grown from 12.4 million to 4.6 billion. So out of all of the billions of people that are in the world, once again, a majority of them use a cell phone. In 20 years, it grew from 12.4 million to 4.6 billion. But watch this. This third stat is a personal stat that I want to share with you. Because if you haven't experienced it, you're going to experience it. They tell you the truth. Almost 50% of the couples I marry meet online.
Oh man, come on now.
Almost 50% of people who are meeting in today's world met first online.
That's in your era.
No, that's in the majority of the world today. But you got to remember, look, it's more young people than it is old people now, because that's just time. And so while it sounds foreign to you, it's the reality that they're living in. Literally, they're meeting individuals online, and they're still getting married. They're just not meeting them in traditional context and in traditional ways. So those are stats, and I want you to know the significance and the importance of technology. To say that, I said all that to say this. You can't get away from technology. You cannot get away from technology. It is here to stay, and it's not going anywhere. Any questions so far from anything that we've asked? Any questions so far for anything that we have asked? Any questions? Comments? Concerns? If not, let's keep moving. And we want to talk about technology for image and influence. Technology for image and influence. It is so important that we understand, that we comprehend this. How you use technology influence how people view your relevance. How you use technology influences how people view your relevance. See, this is what we have to understand. Just because it's relevant to you, it doesn't mean that it's relevant to them. And if you are not meeting them where they are, they will continue to be where they are, and you will continue to be where you are, and it'll never come together. It is so important. When we were coming up, even as a young man, in order to join any church, you had to be there, and you had to sit in the chair when the doors were open. We're now living in a time that if that's the only way people can join your church, many people won't be joining your church. Because people are looking for a relevant way to connect with your ministry. Truthfully and honestly, people view your church online before they ever come in person. And if they cannot find a digital blueprint of your ministry, they will not come. Churches are no longer community churches. You remember it was once a time that a church was in a community, and everybody in that community attended that ministry. One reason was because they didn't have ways to get to other sides of town to get to those churches. So they just literally flocked to that ministry. You knew what church people went to by which community they lived in. Literally. But as time has evolved, we got something that was invented called automobiles. And we can start driving to the churches of our choices. And then you have people that drive near and far to attend church. It's very few people who live within the community of the church where they are worshiping in. There are very few people. I can count the members that live in a realistic walking radius of Mount Bethel on the corner of Arthur Avenue. I can count them. And if you ask some of them to walk, they can talk about you like a dog. Because it's not a realistic expectation. And so you have to understand that if you're going to connect with people, you have to reach beyond your typical reach. You have to reach to a point and to a place where you understand that people are literally scouting you out. They're listening to you, they're watching you, and they're making up in their mind if they're ever going to come or not. They literally sit down at a computer, they literally pick up their phone, they literally pick up their tablet, and they say, no, I don't want to be a part of that. Yes, I want to be a part of that. Oh, that sounds all right. Yeah, that looks all right. And they make a decision about you without even knowing you. Don't know anything about it. Never step foot in there. And that's literally it shows us how relevant we are to them. If someone puts you in Google and nothing pops up, that's the last time they're going to look for you. People literally Google everything.
Yeah, you're right about it.
They Google every single thing. And if you type in church closest to me, your phone will tell you exactly how close a church is to you. And you know what they do? They click on it. And they say, I'm going to go check that out. Or they're going to say, I'm going to just scroll up to the next one until I find one where I want to be. So it's so important for those of you in class, for those of you watching online, that you understand that technology influences your image. It influences how people view you as relevant. And if you want to tap into a generation whose life is consumed by their phones, by their computers, and by technology, you're going to have to meet them in that space. You're going to have to meet them in that space. Secondly, in particular, as always been noted, younger generations access churches through technology. Younger generations access church through technology. I don't want to assume anyone's age or assume how long anyone's been in church. But just by a show of hand, how many of us can honestly say the church has changed since you've been in it? How many of us can say the church has changed since you've been in it? It really changed. And honestly speaking, from our perspective, we believe it changed for the best. Some of us should be old enough to remember when organs wasn't allowed in churches. We old enough to remember when drums were not allowed in churches. And we had parents and grandparents that had a fit when they brought them inside the church. It was an issue. It was a problem. They didn't want all of that took place on Saturday night to start taking place on Sunday morning. And a lot of the gospel artists who came to fame in the 60s and 70s and 80s, people like Aretha Franklin, who was singing Amazing Grace on Sunday, Monday through Saturday, talked about a do-right woman.
Yeah.
He's a do-right man. Give him something he can feel, right? And so it changed. The church literally changed. Anybody who's been in church in the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years know the church has literally changed. And we embrace those changes. Because there were changes that fit us when we were growing up. We were listening to that music that had the beats and the bops. So when they brought it into church, it was a smooth transition. The issue now is we have a problem transitioning when it's not our turn. Isn't it interesting? Now that the shoe is on the other foot. My mother would say it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. Now that it's time for another shift, and this shift is called technology, it's an issue. I often tell people technology has always impacted the church because one piece of technology that we don't view as technology because we always had it is the Bible, the printed Bible, right? We've had a printed Bible since we've been in church. But you got to understand the Bible didn't come into print until the printing press came into existence. So the church was around before the printing press. So can you imagine how they felt that this oral tradition now became a written tradition and Bibles came into play? It's normal to us because we always had it. It's the same way with technology. I have a son. My oldest child is 17 years of age, and he will never know the world without an iPhone. iPhones were introduced to the world in 2003. He was born in 2005, so his whole entire life, every phone could do what an iPhone can do. But I remember before there were even iPhones, I remember flip phones.
Come on.
And I still know.
Yeah. I remember house phones.
Two parties.
And it seems so unimaginable to us, everything these phones can do. But we have generations of people who don't know anything but these phones. So if we tell them a phone never had texting on it before 15, 20 years ago, they'll be like, well, how did you communicate with people? Question?
Very quickly, and I know where I'm coming from, a traditional perspective. Technology, okay, I connect with that person by way of Facebook, and they decide to Cedar Grove.
Mhm.
How do baptism come into play? Is it relevant today? Is that counsel a person out? How do I address that? You know, somebody call me. I give out the telephone number every Sunday.
Mhm.
If you desire to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, call so number. And I help you to be aligned with a Christian church of your choice.
Mhm.
I also mention coming, being a part of Cedar Grove. So the baptism, is that something that if we get in a situation we cannot push, and we might push that person away because they say, well, hey, I'm not able to be there.
Baptism is foundational to our faith. It's one of our two ordinances as Baptist churches that we do. It's baptism and communion. That's something that's foundational to our faith. It'll never not be foundational to our faith, and that's a wonderful question. I had a professor, God rest his soul, that went on to be with the Lord, the Reverend Dr. William F. Buchanan, who passed the 15th Avenue Baptist Church, who has about 5 years ago now. I think time flies. Well, anyway, I remember we were sitting in class and we were talking about the importance and significance of baptism. He talked about how he had a member who had a sibling who was in the hospital, terminally ill and dying. He went up to the hospital and he was hooked up to all of these machines. He was plugged in here, plugged in there, plugged in there. He said he was laying on the bed and he couldn't say much. But Dr. Buchanan asked him if he wanted to give his life to Christ, and he nodded his head. And then he asked the class, he said, now do you think I went to the doctor and told him to unhook all these machines so I can baptize him? He asked him, did you think I was about to risk the few moments that he had left living just to fulfill this notion of submersion by water? You know, we wrestle with that question because our faith tells us you have to be submerged by water. I would say in the instance of what you said is one thing too. We are part of a larger body of Christ. And wherever this individual is, if they cannot get to see the grove, you ought to have some type of relational connection with a church in the community that you can say, hey, I have an individual who's giving their life to Christ. Because what's important is them giving their life to Christ. Right. And you want to see them baptized. So let's say they're in Nashville. Hey, Dr. Boyd, I got an individual who's just joined the body of Christ. You mind baptizing them for us? So it's not necessarily them getting to you, but it's making sure that you're connecting with the whole mass of the body of Christ. So if it's that significant, that important, and they can't get to you, you say, I got a partner church who's in my district. I have a partner church in my state convention. I have a partner church in my national convention. I got a such and such that I went to school with that I can send you to them, and they can take care of that act for you. It doesn't have to be an individualistic thing. One thing I say every time I open up the doors of the church of Mount Bethel is, the first thing I'm doing before I invite you into our family of faith, I'm inviting you into the body of Christ. And we have become so individualistic, we forget that we're just a part of the larger body. So my thing would be, well, people have joined from all over. We're going to talk about how people join from all over now. It's important that you can connect with them and that you're not an island. And too many of our churches are island, and we can't pick up the phone and call our sister churches. That's what we used to call one another. We were sister churches. And if I couldn't do, that means you could do. Right? And so we should be able to pick up and say, hey, we got an individual who's living in that community, who's just giving their life to Christ. Can you baptize them for me? And I don't think anybody like, nah, they ain't joining my church. You know, you need to quit fellowship with them, but they say something like that. Anyway, but like literally, you got to have those relationships. So if an individual does come in that way, and they can't have the means to get to you, no matter what city, no matter what state, it is okay, we can take care of it that way, because it's so important that they believe in their heart and confess with their mouth. You know, our Church of Christ brother believe you don't go in the water, you know, you going straight to hell if they don't get the baptism. That's why they baptize every week, because they believe, hey, if you join, we're going to baptize you this week, or you ain't saved. But we do know that is just a outward sign of that inner confession. You know, you believe in your heart, confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord. Yeah, right there, then you save, and then we go through the symbolism of baptism, knowing what's going on. But it is important. I would never not say it is foundational to our faith, communion and baptism. That's our two ordinances of the church. They always have been. They always will be, as long as I'm concerned. So yes, it is important. So I will make sure that I have just a network or whatever that individual is and say, this is what we believe and such that can be able to do it for us. It's not an individual thing because we're baptizing you into the body of faith. Yeah, you might belong to Cedar Grove, but you're a part of this larger body of Christendom now. Yeah, it is.
This thing of worshiping virtually, is this going to be something that's going to be ongoing? It's not going to stop. We're going to keep doing this.
Virtual will be here to stay. Everything going forward would be a hybrid model, and we're going to talk about the importance of everything being a hybrid model too, because honestly now people can attend and engage where they might not been able to in a traditional setting. So we remember, we were talking, Pastor, before you came back in, about how the church has changed. But we didn't think about association changing. I remember when I was a lad, association started during the day.
Look out.
And it ran all night.
Yeah.
Literally, people took their vacation at work around being at the association. And now that didn't change with our generation, that changed with y'all generation. Because you all are the ones who say, well, we ain't gonna do it during the day, we'll move it to the night. You know, people work, etc., right? Matter of fact, I know for our state convention, it was President R.W. Seibert who switched it, and we didn't start meeting to 2 o'clock in the evening for our state convention. And I witnessed that. That was about 19 years ago when he came in the office and did that. But I remember it was an all-day thing. Like, you went to the morning, and you went all the way through the night.
And they fed them all day.
Yeah. And so, but now, only reason I know about it, I was raised in it, you know. But anybody my age, they don't know nothing about them all-day associations and all-day state convention. And my children sure not going to know anything about it because it's just that far gone. But with this hybrid model that we have now, people can attend at any time. Because like we're live now, I don't know how many people's watching on Facebook and YouTube where I get a count, but one thing I do know is people are watching at their convenience. They might get done and get the kids to bed and sit down and watch it. Or that they might get done with their homework. They might be on the clock. You know, some people get to watch stuff while they're at work. They might be at work and watching it, right? And that's a win for us. That's a win. If we can reach one more person than we could before now, that is a wonderful thing. So I don't ever see it going anywhere because I know personally I have members who have not stepped foot in the sanctuary in over 2 years, but they haven't missed a worship service. Not a one. If it's on, matter of fact, they on right now watching because it's on our page. They on right now watching because they haven't missed. And guess what? If we didn't have technology, we wouldn't have had that option. I tell people all the time, for the pandemic to come, I'm thankful it came now. When the church had a means of survival, than if it would have came 20 years ago when we didn't have any of this stuff. Just think about churches shutting down 20 years ago. What would have been done? It wouldn't have been.
You had to go to the corner.
You know, and seriously, so like, it was a bad thing that it happened, but it was good that it happened now. Because literally churches were able to go on and to move forward, and people are attending and watching. Brother, I'm telling you, I promise you right now, there's somebody attending the Stone River District Congress that's been about part of Mount Bethel, even when my predecessor was moderator that didn't come, is watching right now. Just because it's online. And it's nothing to feel guilty about because guess what? Maybe work didn't allow them to come. Maybe their schedule didn't allow them to come. You know, because some people, the evening is all they have. If you know you don't work all day from 9 to 5, you know you're tired. But guess what? They can get home, get dinner cooked, and then just pick up their phone, pick up the tablet, turn it on their TV. They're going to engage and enjoy it just as much if they couldn't. Yes, I believe it's going to be here. Anybody with any sense will make sure that everything is hybrid because you want to give people that option, that choice, and that way they don't even feel guilty. They don't feel guilty. Okay, no, I can't be there at 6 o'clock, but I'll be able to tune in at 6:15 and catch it. I'll be able to watch it in the morning while I'm getting ready for work and still gather what it is that I need to gather. One thing I often say with technology is this: church was literally, in most people's case, 2 days a week. it was Wednesday and Sunday. Now the church is 7 days a week. Because literally when people can pull up on demand and watch and listen and engage in your ministry, it's literally happened 7 days a week. And the church by design was supposed to be 24/7. By design, that's when Jesus, it was supposed to be a 24/7 thing. You know, they used to go prayer at noon, at 3, at 9. They went all the times of the day. But now our church is usually open 2 days a week. But at least with these platforms now, people can engage at 24/7. They can't say, I didn't go to church at 11 o'clock, so I just missed church this week. No, it's still online. You can go watch it at any time.
Right.
Now, if you don't watch it at any time, that's because you just didn't want to watch it.
And you know what's good about this? Even your phone or your iPad or whatever. We were listening to Bible study down in the den. But when we was trying to get ready for church, we just carried it with us. Everywhere we went, we carried it with us. Even in the car.
Yeah.
You can take it to the car. And still be watching or listening to the Bible study.
And it makes a difference.
It makes a difference.
It makes a difference because guess what? You can't get ready inside the sanctuary at church. You can't be cooking dinner and still listening to what's going on at the church, right? And so it has its pros and its cons, but particularly younger generation, if you're going to see the younger generation in your ministry, you're going to have technology. It's just going to have to happen. Because you got to look at this. It happens everywhere else, and you don't want to be the only dated thing in their lives. Think about it in school now, particularly Metro Nashville Public School. Every child has a laptop.
Right.
They literally go in the classroom, sit down with their teacher, and guess what? Get on their computer.
That's right.
Think about that. They go to school, go in the classroom with a teacher, sit down, and get on their computer.
And everybody who don't have children don't know that, but I know that's the truth.
They don't have paper. Everything they get, they turn in on the computer.
That's to eliminate digital divide. Trying to bring everything on digital.
Turn back just for a moment. Is there any way you can measure how well a person focused on that which was presented to them on a Sunday Bible study or wherever? You mentioned that so many of the members that didn't come to the Stone River in the past, they're doing it now because of the virtual arrangement that you have. But how is there any way that you can set up some kind of way that you can measure how whether a person really was focused on your presentation or not?
You can't measure that in person.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you can't, because you know people sit in your face and act like nod and say, yeah, you can't really measure that in person, right?
But you see what I'm saying?
But you do have some data.
Huh?
You do have some data, and the more data you have, the more based on decision you have, the better decision you can make, because you have your classroom, then on your computer it's recording and it's keeping up with the people that are watching and tapping. So you have a lot more data.
And I'll say this too, brother moderator. I have people now that we're back in person. I say an announcement and they're not listening. And I know people don't lie when I say an announcement. They're not listening. You know, that always been the case. We never, even when everything was in person, we didn't have everybody's attention. You know, they might sit there and nod and then they're like, what'd he say? What we supposed to be doing? So, you know, that wasn't even, we never really had a true measure of someone's attentiveness. And that for me, I remember preaching to a camera lens was one of the hardest things that I ever done in my life. Because I was like, I don't know if people listening, I don't know if they're getting it or anything, but every now and again, when I wanted to be discouraged, I receive a phone call or a text, and they say, Pastor, you said this. Or I'll be talking to a member in conversation, and they'll regurgitate something I said, and then I'll be like, okay, God, somebody was. And look, all we want, pastors, is one. You know, if one listen, we hit a home run in our book, you know, because you never get 100% to listen. And so to get that, God is sitting just out of nowhere, we talk to somebody, and they say something, you're like, man, they were listening to that sermon. You know what I'm saying? They did understand what I was trying to portray, even through a lens. So, you know, God always is sitting that confirmation to you and I'll say more about that later. But how do you use technology to influence how people view your relevancy? In particular, younger generations that says churches through technology. But watch this. Today, your web presence is directly related to your image. Your web presence is directly related to your image. A few years ago, people perceived the type of ministry you had by the type of building you had. You know, we used to have that saying, that slogan, build it and they will come. And so many of our churches across this country spent millions of dollars building buildings because people who seen our buildings had a perception of our ministry. One thing the pandemic did was put it, regardless of the size of your building, it leveled the playing field. Because I don't care if your building held 10 people or 10,000 people, you couldn't have nobody in it. So no longer is your image based on the type of building you have, but now it's based on what type of web presence you have. Watch this. Y'all remember when we used to meet people, we used to give them our card. People today don't carry any cards.
I got a big box at the house now.
Yeah, just wasted.
Yeah.
They're just wasted. Now, people don't carry any cards. Everything's gonna happen with this. Look, if you tell somebody what church you go to, guess what the first thing they do? They look it up. Let me see what it is about this church. Let me see what this church look like. They don't care what your building look like. Because 9 out of 10, they might not ever come to it. Don't mean they won't come to your ministry. They might not just come to your building. Let me look at them and see. Let me see what they're doing. Let me see what I see. Let me see how it looks. Let me see if it's attractive to me. Let me see if it's anything that I want to see. So now you have to be conscious and aware of what you look like online. I have members all the time that be like, this didn't sound right, this didn't look right. And it's important because that's what they see and hear. So it doesn't matter how great a word it is if people can't hear it. It doesn't matter.
You were correct in that. Just this past March, I tuned in just for a moment to the Garden Naval lecture, and a young lady mentioned the same point that you were just brought up. You can have bad lighting in your church, you know, and all of that. But if they can hear, they'll tolerate that. But if they have a hard time hearing, they're going somewhere else.
Yeah, it is. And so it's so important that your well presence is on. And the thing about it, you can't control what videos they see. You know, because we know what our best video is, and we know what our worst one is. And your luck, when they pop up, that's which one gonna pop up. The one you don't want them to see. And they kind of hard. They ain't gonna give you another chance. Now your own folks might give you another look at another chance, but strangers and outsiders, they're gonna give you another look, another chance. So your well presence is important. Same way we used to say, if you build it, they'll come. Your building have to look like this. Your building have to look like that. Now you need to have that same energy on your well presence. When people Google your name, the picture they see, what it looks like. It needs to be there. Your website needs to be up to par. Your Facebook platform needs to be up to par. It needs to be up to date. Just last week, in our noonday Bible study, a young lady from San Antonio, Texas, joined our Bible study. No one knew her. She joined our Bible study, and I called her after Bible study, reached out to her praying because she had just lost her husband. I'm like, just a question. How did you find Mount Bethel out of all the churches in the world? And she said, because I searched in noonday Bible studies and it popped up. And I'm pretty sure we're not the only noonday Bible study in the country, but it's something about our noonday Bible study posts that attracted her to come and join and to participate and to be a part of that Bible study. That's one person we never would have had if we wasn't online. And to me, it's worth whatever investment the church has put in it. And this is what I learned particularly about my church. With all we're investing in technology, they appreciate it and also expect it to work in a certain function. And so it's so important or that you don't go skimpy, because you get what you pay for, especially with technology. You get what you pay for. I'm not saying you gotta get the highest dollar everything, but I am saying don't get the lowest dollar everything.
That's what your kingpin over there just told me about what
Yeah.
you ready to purchase.
Yeah.
At least what was recommended to me for Cedar Grove.
Mhm.
He said, don't get that.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And it's important to ask, and the reason being, you feel like you're saving money, but in the long run, you haven't done anything. I tell people all the time, you get what you pay for, and especially with technology, like with phones, go get one of them $99 phones. Yeah, it might work all right for a little while. You know what I'm saying? It might get you by. But it's not going to function in a way that's going to keep you up to date and up to speed. Like, people all the time, like, man, you spend all that on an iPhone. I was like, yeah, but if you ever learn how to use one, you will see why. Because it takes you everything, and it does everything that you need it to do. So it's so important about that. And then, lastly on this, social media impacts your influence. Social media impacts your influence. Social media has provided platforms to individuals who don't need them, but it also has given a platform for individuals that do. Look, fam, I don't know about you, but one thing I always envisioned and wanted to do was to preach all over the world. And I've been blessed and privileged. I have preached internationally in other countries, even in this young stage of my ministry, right? But social media has allowed me to preach in countries I probably would have never went to. Because it literally has given everybody on social media a global impact. Because your page can be seen by anybody at any time. And social media is so good. Watch this. It even translates into the language of wherever it is that they're watching from.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty about social media. If you were in China and you pull up your social media page, all of it will be in Chinese. On its own. You don't have to do anything. You don't speak no Mandarin. Because that's what social media does. So social media impacts your influence. So where you would just influence a small group of people, no matter how many people you had, now your social media allows you to influence the world and everybody they share it with. You'll be surprised now how you had your group of members and then they share your page. And now they know another 1,000 people. And then when you get to those other 1,000 people, one more of them they share it with another 1,000 people. And now your message and your word done been shared to 2,000 of people.
So what you were saying, as we look at social media impact or influence, is there a waste of money adding what they call boosts to your Facebook Live? If people share, the presentation or the services or whatever, then you are expanding your influence right there. So many people think that boosting is going to help. But the guy I forget the pastor's name in Houston, doing the National Baptist Convention of America presentation about 2 years ago, he said, don't get caught up in the views. Because it might be a person that look at it for about 10 seconds and they're gone. So what I'm saying, if we're going to have impact, if the persons who are watching then share, then you are multiplying your influence rather than purchasing, what's it, boost?
Yeah, a boost when you boost a post. Let me say this though about boosting posts, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm a fan of boosting posts, and I will say it's worth the investment if you reach just one. Because boosting a post, you decide how much you budget towards that. So let's just say you budget $50 to boost a post, and you say I'm on $50 a month. I'm just gonna boost my post for $50 a month, whatever they give me. How many other people give me views? Out of that post, if it reaches one person who becomes aware of your ministry, that $50 investment was worth every penny of it when it happened in that way, right? And so it's really about the results that you get from it, because, and I'm gonna talk about this more later, I know individuals who were introverts, who didn't engage in person, who are some of the best disciples digitally. They're always sharing, they're always liking, they're always commenting, and I was like, I didn't even know they could talk. We get online and they engaging more than anybody, right? And so that'll be a preference thing about boosting your post or not boosting your post. But no, what Facebook will do is they'll get it to people that's not in your sphere of influence, whereas you'll be getting it to people who are in your sphere of influence. But if you get all your members just to share, that'd be a wonderful thing. Now, they ain't gonna do it, but it'd be a wonderful thing.
What is boost? I don't even know what that is, but I know share and all that stuff, but I don't know.
Well, boosting is an option that they give for all the business pages to boost your post out. Like, say we had this district online and we wanted it to reach 5,000 people between the ages of 18. It's very specific, between these ages, living in these communities, and Facebook will literally go find all the people who meet your criteria and send your post to them.
We wouldn't need to do that. We can just share.
Yeah. See, social media runs off an algorithm. And if you ever notice, have you ever said something or done something, looked at a shoe, looked at a car, and next thing you know it's on your Facebook page in an ad? Those companies pay Facebook to make sure you see that. And guess what? You might not buy it. But if they do that to 1 million people and one person buy, it's worth the investment. You know? It's really an investment type thing, and you got to say what you're willing and what you're not willing to invest into. And those big companies, they know, hey, they get you to buy their car, they make $60,000 off you, and that ad didn't probably cost them nothing but $1. It was worth the investment, right? And so that's what you just got to know. But social media does impact your influence, because people can hear and see you that never would have heard or seen you, because they were never walking into your church. It's just some people that would have never walked into your church that heard you. I have met a numerous amount of people who haven't stepped foot in Mount Bethel. They're like, man, it was good to hear you preach. And that only happened because we were on social media platforms. Technology is for image and influence, but technology is for creating community. Technology is for creating community. If you get nothing else I say on this week, I want you to get this about community. Because community is all about communication. I want y'all to get that. Community is all about communication. Somebody watching online, put that in the comments for me. Community is all about communication. We cannot be a community if we do not communicate. And communication isn't one-sided, nor is communication one way. It's interesting. At Mount Bethel, we're a multi-generational church. We have them as old as in their 90s, and we have them as young as just born, right? And the interesting thing about that is we have to communicate with every member, regardless of their age, in a way that they can understand. So what's interesting about us, when we were a digital-only worship service, some people were just on Facebook. And even today we still look. We're on Facebook because some people were Facebook users. We're on YouTube because some people was YouTube users. We're on Zoom because some people were Zoom users. We're on conference call because some people just knew how to pick up the phone and call, right? And so it was so important that we needed to communicate in all of those ways. Because community is about communication. And so you have to know how to communicate with each and every individual, and we can't be so selfish and so biased that we're going to just communicate with this certain group of people and just forget about that group of people. One thing, we have children's church every Sunday, and the youth director of children's church came to me. He was like, man, instead of just doing traditional children's church every Sunday, he said, man, every now and again, we're going to bring in tablets for everybody to do children's church on. He said, we're going to bring in laptops for everybody to do children's church on. And he did so, and they engaged it and had fun. So they still did their Sunday lesson. But it wasn't just coloring within the lines. But they found a way to engage them through technology in something that they knew and something that they were familiar with. Because you have to learn how to communicate with people where they are. Because community is about communication. And all of us communicate differently. While we have similarities in our communication, we communicate differently. And one way that current generation communicate is through technology. Literally, I don't know about you, but I can be in the same house, and instead of talking, they text. Because that's how they communicate. And if I didn't know how to communicate through text, the truth is, some people I probably wouldn't get to talk to. Because that's how they communicate. And so we have to say, as Jesus has said, I become all things to all people so they will believe. And so we can't be so stubborn or so unwilling to adapt and change that we say we're going to just cast this generation away because we're not going to communicate with them. Because community is all about communication. And if we can't communicate Christ to them, how do we ever expect for them to know Him? If we cannot communicate Christ to them, how do we ever expect for them to know Him? So we have to find out how to meet them where they are. And we have to be okay with it. We have to, I know it may hurt our pride, I know it might hurt our ego, but we have to be okay that the main thing is they're in relationship with Christ. And so if they need my sermon to be uploaded on a podcast so they can listen to it while they're at the gym, I'm uploading my sermon on the podcast so they can listen to it while they're at the gym. Because guess what? They're not listening to me. They're listening to somebody. And the somebody they're listening to might not be teaching them what thus said the Lord. It might be teaching them what it is that they want them to know. So are you more willing to allow someone else to communicate with your community? Or are you willing to do what you have to do to communicate with your community? That's really what we have to ask ourselves. Everyone, either you're going to communicate or you're going to allow somebody else to communicate. And if somebody else is communicating, you can't be upset with what it is that they're communicating. Community is all about communication. We have about 7 more minutes. I'm going to give you this and we'll dismiss and get ready to go to worship. Number one, leaders need up-to-date communication from staff. It was a point in time where I couldn't communicate with you until I seen you. It was a time that if you wasn't at home and I wasn't at home, we couldn't communicate. But that no longer exists in 2022. And it is a time as leaders that we should never be out of the loop of what's going on. Because guess what? We have these. And even if you're in the middle of something that you can't pick up and dial, you can text.
Let me say this very quickly. All of the communication that the staff have had prior to tonight has been by way
of their phone.
Their telephone. Whenever they come together, we're very specific. Because a lot of times you come together, there's a lot of jawboning going on. And there's no substance with it. I just wanted to make mention of that.
Yeah. And you can get stuff done through this. Now, everybody might not be a fan of it. Because it's times it makes me mad too. I can't get a hold of anybody and get face to face with anybody. But it ain't any excuse now. And leaders need up-to-date communication from staff. There's no reason anybody that you're working with are not communicating you at all times. You know, it used to be, that happened Thursday, you don't find out for Sunday because that's when you're seeing each other again. That's no longer the excuse. Like literally everybody's a text message away. And even if you can't text back, you can at least read it. So you're in a know-how. Not only do leaders need up-to-date communication from staff, guess what? Groups use, what Moderator just talked about, use technology to organize. This whole Congress was put on because of technology. Just imagine how many people we would have been able to retain 20 years ago if we had technology in place. How many people wanted to come to church, participate in church, but couldn't because you can only do that by being there. able to retain a lot of individuals if they would have been able to watch church while they were sick and shut in. A lot of people, when they got of age, and God rest my grandmother's soul, she left here December 16th of 2020. And when she went on to be with the Lord, she had fallen sick and was no longer able to attend church. And her church didn't have a virtual platform. And I remember talking to her. She was like, I just feel bad. I can't go to church now. She was feeling guilty because she couldn't go to church then. And I remember telling her, well, Grandma, you shouldn't feel guilty because you worked while it was day.
Yeah.
You went while you could. But at the same time, something was turning in my head that says how many individuals have went on to glory feeling guilty because their bodies wouldn't allow them to do what their mind wanted them to do. But just imagine if I could have told a grandmama, just watch it on the TV. Grandmama, just listen to it on the phone. And it's something that anybody could have did, or somebody could have came and did it for them. And she still would have been getting the same word. She still would have been able to get this, and we all know this, and churches mean well, but if you stay sick too long, church folks forget about you. The thing about church, and I love the church, been a part of the church my whole life. If you get sick and don't die immediately, they forget about you. And it's not out of ill intent, don't get it wrong, they're not being malicious. But you just stay sick too long. People start saying stuff like, I didn't know they were still alive. I'm telling you, in our churches, man, look, if you get sick, you better die immediately. Because if you stay sick too long, they don't forget. But guess what? You know how many people done got sick since you got sick? And the new sick person get the love that you used to get as the old sick person.
You all not have a sick ministry?
We do. No, I'm just talking about the church in general. It do, but if you think it becomes a lot even for the ministry. Because the more people you have, that's the more sickness you're gonna have. I know 2021 for Mount Bethel was a rough year. Cause literally we were having funerals back to 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 back. And it came so swift and so quick, and it became so much on everybody. Right, and it is a lot, and the more you grow and the more people it is to connect to, the one thing we believe in Mount Bethel, that once you become a part of this family of faith, and even though you're the only member, if your spouse gets sick, if your children get sick, if your grandchildren get sick, we treat them with the same love on your behalf just because you're a part of this family. Yeah, you know, and it becomes so much because so many people got sick, especially with COVID. I almost got scared to start answering the phone because I know somebody was about to tell me somebody else was sick. I'm like, gee golly, right? But literally, technology is used to organize. And just imagine how much things you can do with technology now with that sick ministry. One thing, we had the call-out system, right? And so it went from the sick ministry calling, letting everybody know somebody was sick, to making one phone call, and hundreds of people were called to know everybody was sick. And then it calls you, it texts you, and it emails you. Right, so it allows you to organize stuff. You can put on conferences, you can put on church, you can put on meetings, all through technology. I remember we had to have business meetings in the middle of a pandemic, right? And we wasn't gathering together, but we were still able to have those meetings because of Zoom. Right, we was able to get the information out, and we were still able to carry on church business as usual, right? We just wasn't physically there. We still had the motions, we still had the minutes. We still had the numbers that we needed. So groups use technology to organize, and it's time to go. Lastly, technology helps the whole congregation and others be informed. It allows the whole congregation to be informed. As I said, when we do a call out, it calls you, it texts you, it emails you, whatever your preference is, it will come directly to you, and it allows you to be informed because in that old call system, it's easy to miss somebody. You know, because such and such stuff they called you. Such and such stuff they called you. You know, it done been times where people been sick and died and forgot to tell me. And I don't believe it was malicious. Don't get it wrong. You know, it wasn't a malicious thing like I ain't gonna tell Pastor this happened. But so much was happening and going on, you know, everybody thought that I was called and told. and literally nobody called and told me, right? And it happens. But with that call out system, they know that you identify certain people, and once they get to that certain individual, we know it'll get to the masses of everybody. We'll pick up here on tomorrow night. We thank God each and every one of you to join us. We're about to go in and worship and listening to Dr. James Bailey of the Great St. John Baptist Church. Blessings for the word on tonight. But continue, please, ma'am, please, sir. Write down your questions. We'll ask them the best that we know how. We'll continue to engage them. For those of you online, put your questions in the comments. We will engage them the best we know how. We thank God for each and every one of you. And we look forward to seeing you on tomorrow night as we talk about how technology influences ministry and mission.
Could somebody volunteer, be the go-to person, collect a love gift for our instructor and pass it on to him on Friday? You know, just, I'm not in all the classes, but that'd be something, Brother Dean, you mentioned tonight in your announcements. Also, the board meeting Friday at 5:30. I was gonna plan all that too.
Okay.
Just, board meeting 5:30.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. Consider yourselves dismissed, and remember, any questions, comments, concerns, please, ma'am, please, sir, don't forget to ask them or share. I love y'all, miss you.